So that was a really wonderful, high-level, PhD-level crash course in some of the concepts around the ideas of design thinking. So let's give Natalie another hand for that. That was really great. Very wonderful. So we did there, that was a very high-level, very strategic thinking there. So what I'm going to talk about is a little bit more about how we will use some of these concepts and some of these ideas in a day-to-day setting when we are trying to solve problems through software at ArtWeb and beyond. And we do this via a method that we call the design studio. And a design studio is our repeatable process for how we bring some of these concepts of design thinking to bear. So what is Design Studio? Where do we get Design Studio? Design Studio, the concept takes a lot of its cues from architecture and industrial design. So if you heard a lot of different disciplines are informing Design Studio. Oop, that's the wrong way. Pardon me. Design Studio's purpose is to generate lots and lots of concrete ideas quickly. So when Natalie was talking about divergent thinking, Design Studio is a tool to facilitate a lot of that divergent thinking, for us to have lots of different ideas and to generate them quickly rather than obsessing over them and taking too long to get to an idea. And another key component of Design Studio is that it will pre-vet ideas with your stakeholders for the problem that you're trying to solve. So because Design Studio is such a participatory activity and involves so many different aspects of the solution space, your ideas then become pre-vetted. You don't have to then go take them to another source and pitch them to in a big complicated meeting. They're already pre-vetted by virtue of being as part of the Design Studio. And as such, we then are able to build consensus around those ideas. So we're able to move much more quickly towards a solution than having to go through and present an idea in a different context. So what is Design Studio not? Design Studio is not a proprietary process. Any of you can take this Design Studio process that we're about to walk through and bring it back to your companies on tomorrow or Thursday if you're not here tomorrow, and run a Design Studio on the next big software problem that you're facing. You can do this whenever you're ready. Design Studio is also not a place. If you come visit our office at Second and Market, which you are all welcome to do, just let me know, you will not see any office room. There's no sign anywhere that says this is a Design Studio. The Design Studio is anywhere. You can bring the concept with you wherever you go. Design Studio is not at all about pretty pictures. And that's one of the struggles we often have when we talk about design. We've got this idea about design that it has a lot to do with the way something looks. Design Studio is really about this concept of design thinking, generating divergent ideas and bringing them all to bear. And the most important aspect of Design Studio, and the one that I emphasize the most, and probably why we're here today, Design Studio is not just for designers. In fact, how many people in this room would self-identify as I am a designer? Okay. So this is to emphasize the point that Design Studio is for all of you. Design Studio is for the engineers in the room. Design Studio is for the product people in the room. Design Studio is for the QA engineers in the room. Design Studio is for the CEOs in the room. Design Studio is for everybody. So what are some of the goals when we execute a Design Studio session? One of the main goals will be to gather and understand requirements for the problem that we're hoping to solve. Thinking about the way things ought to be rather than the way things are. So we're thinking about the solution state rather than the current state. That's an important key aspect of Design Studio thinking. As I mentioned before, generating lots and lots and lots of concrete ideas and pre-vetting those ideas and building consensus around them. So the Design Studio process has 4 major steps to it, and they are illumination, creation, pitching of the ideas, and then critiquing the ideas. So we call step 0 illuminate, because step 0, it helps us to understand where we're starting from, and that's the illumination part of the process. So we will then, so whatever problem we're attempting to solve, a key stakeholder for that problem will elevator pitch the product. Tell me in 30 seconds, in other words, in the time that it would take me to get from the bottom floor of an elevator to the top floor of an elevator, what is this product? What is the problem we are hoping to solve with it? We can often use this opportunity to discuss the business opportunities or goals around it and understand, why are we all here today? What is the problem we're attempting to solve? We can then present that value proposition, examine the competitive products. So this is an opportunity for us to evaluate what else is out there, what other products are available in this space that are helping to speak to these needs. And this is where we'll also do things like defining a user journey and feature set. So a user journey, how many of us have heard the phrase user journey before? Excellent, okay. A user journey then defines the users of what software piece we're trying to solve here. What are the goals this user needs to achieve? That's a key part of the user journey. And what is the user's path through? So one of a great example I like to use to define what a user journey is and how it could be much more complex than maybe you think it is. Would anybody like to explain to me how to make a peanut butter sandwich? Not, yes?
Take one piece of bread, take another piece of bread, put peanut butter, put a butter knife on one bread, stack them together.
Okay. Where did I take the pieces of bread from?
Probably some bag, ShopRite.
Some bag I got where?
Got a ShopRite or something.
Okay. How did I get to the store?
You drove.
You drove. Okay, I drove. What if I don't have a car? How do I get to the store then?
You walk.
Okay, okay. How do so I heard one of the steps there was doing something with peanut butter. Was the peanut butter jar already open, or did I have to open that?
It's a new peanut butter jar. You have to take it yourself.
Okay, new peanut butter jar, I have to open it myself. So it's a new peanut butter jar. So was there a foil seal on the jar, or? Okay, there was a foil seal on the jar. And believe me, I ask these questions not to make fun or not to make a point here, but to understand that no matter how simple the problem you think you're solving is, there are multiple steps to it that you had not even considered until you break a problem down in that way. If you get all the way down to, how did I get to the store to get the peanut butter? Or if it's a new jar, did I peel the foil off there? You have to attack the software problem or the problem that you're trying to solve with that level of detail, because there are so many assumptions baked into the way we often think about problems, and one of the goals of Design Studio is to identify those assumptions and break them apart so that we can all start fresh and not be so worried about those assumptions. And this is this is a high-level example of a user flow here. So in practice, what this ends up looking at is we will write today's state over here, the goal state over here, and then try and work our way backwards and say, okay, from the goal state, what's the step immediately preceding that? What's the step immediately preceding that? And applying that level of, some would call it dense thinking, to establishing all the different steps that we'll need to identify. So another key component of a design studio will be this idea of the illumination and the feature matrix. So one of the things we'll do here is we will hand everybody packs of Post-it notes. We will ask them to write down one key feature or key way to solve this problem on each Post-it note. So one per note. We will have another way you can do this is identifying pain points, say one pain point per Post-it. What am I hoping to solve? And then read those Post-its aloud to the group, and then you take those Post-it notes and as a group sort of self-organize them into categories, and then you have what many of you in the software world would understand as epics, big columns of functionality that you can then work on and break into discrete pieces. So this is what, in practice, one of these might look like. So we'll have a whiteboard, a number of Post-it notes that we've then gone through and self-organized and realized that we have a column for listings for this particular piece of software, a column for search, a column for onboarding, and these things all became obvious once everybody in the room wrote down their feature requests and their thoughts on Post-it notes, and we all came through and self-organize those. So that's the illumination portion of a design studio. That's what we call step 0. Step 1, where we really start to get cranking, is the creation step. And how do we create in a design studio? Well, we create by sketching. That is the coin of the realm in design studio. That is the way we use to communicate all of the ideas we have about the problem that we're solving. And Natalie did a really great job of walking you through some of those introductory sketching exercises. Sketching really, I struggle to emphasize this enough, but sketching is really just thinking on paper. And in a design studio, we're really trying not to emphasize technical proficiency. We're not trying to emphasize, no one's going to hang your sketches on the wall at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. So just want to alleviate that concern right now. We are really sketching to put the ideas in your head on paper and make them concrete, and more importantly, make them so that others can react to them. That is the key here. The sketch is really just a placeholder for your idea for someone else to be able to react to it once you pitch it. That's all we're hoping to accomplish with a sketch. So this is a fine level of fidelity for sketching in a design studio area. So this is, you'll believe me when I tell you, this is a web login form. Here's my logo, username, password, submit. That simple. That level of fidelity is all you need to communicate the ideas for a design studio. So, but why sketch? We have so many other tools at our disposal to be able to visually render ideas. Why do we sketch? Well, the reason we sketch is again, it's about what sketching isn't. It's not Photoshop. It is not code. It is not PowerPoint. Everybody in the room is equally uncomfortable. Everybody in the room is equally not in their comfort element. So that helps us all get to a place of community and understanding and empathy. I personally like to emphasize that we should use Sharpies when we're sketching. And this may seem like picky in detail. Why do we care about what we use? And there are reasons for it. It's the appropriate level of fidelity. You can't do too much detail with a Sharpie. You are stuck rendering big fat lines, boxes, squares, circles. That gives us just enough detail to capture the idea and be able to pitch it. And my personal reason why I mandate pens or Sharpies, you can't erase it. You can only cross it out. It keeps your hand moving. You don't have the opportunity to evaluate yourself on the fly. You just have to keep going. So when we do the sketching exercise for everything that every feature we're going to attack, or every problem we're going to attack, we will then go through and we will attack it via sketching. And we will try to generate 4 to 6 sketches for a given thing that we're trying to solve within 5 minutes. And I want to go back to the idea of time boxing here, because you saw it in a number of the instances that Natalie talked about earlier, where there was always a time component to that. And that's not just because we are in a big room and we only have a certain amount of time to talk to you. The idea there is that the time box puts a constraint on us. And it sort of seems like a counterintuitive idea, but often the most creative ideas will come when they are bouncing off of a constraint, whether that be a constraint of a medium, a constraint of a time box. So this time box forces us to turn off that evaluative part of our brain and really just tap into the part of our brain that creates. We just want to keep our hand moving, and the time box encourages us to do that. And when we sketch, we can attack it from one of 2 ways. We can attempt to solve the problem, or we can attempt to illustrate via a storyboard, how does this work? So a user flow, go through different elements of the problem, step 1, step 2, step 3. And once we've all had our 5 minutes to sketch, we will then go through, and this is the really key part of a design studio exercise, the pitching. This is where you take the opportunity and share your ideas with the group that you're working with. So again, I emphasize this idea, sketches are really nothing more than placeholders for your pitch. The only purpose of the sketch is to give you enough to relate to so you can then verbally teach your idea back to the group. And the pitch is your opportunity to sell your vision for the solution. Let us inside your head. Let us know what you were thinking. Tell us how you got to this place. So how this looks in practice, we'll generally take the sketches, tape them up on the wall, and everyone will get 3 minutes to walk us through their idea. And again, it's always framed in terms of how does this solve the problem, or how does this sketch become useful to our users. And another key important of the pitch process here is that the floor is yours. There will be no cross-talking, so it is your floor exclusively. The people will have an opportunity to ask questions, but you have the floor while you are pitching. Now, once everyone has had an opportunity to pitch their ideas, we enter the critiquing stage. And again, critique is another word like design that has kind of come to have an alternate meaning than the one we're striving for here. Critique is not bad. I need to really double underscore this idea. Critique is not bad. The purpose of critique is to make good ideas better, or help the group decide between a number of existing good ideas. Critique is not feedback. Feedback is when someone says, I like this, or I didn't like this. We've all heard horror stories of folks who will get glommed onto who say, I don't like blue, or some other arbitrary reaction to a design. That's not critique, that's feedback. I can't work with that. What I can work with is this solution works because, or this solution does not solve the problem because. It's a distinction and an important difference in how we present ideas in a design studio. So when we critique, we all go through and we'll get an opportunity, everyone gets an opportunity to discuss each other's ideas. For each, think about 2 reasons it was effective in the critique process and 1 thing it can do better. And I like that ratio because it's thinking twice as much about a positive aspect of the sketch or design, but still providing an opportunity for something it can do better. Because nobody's going to solve the problem directly in one sketch. So there's always something it could do better. Now, once we go through that process, we'll be able to go through something called dot voting. We'll give you dot stickers, and you can then distribute those based upon which ones you think solve the problem the best. So if you could put all your dots on one solution, if you think it really killed it, you can put 2 on one on another, you can put them on your own, it doesn't matter. But then at the end of this, we will have a wall full of dozens of ideas and attempts to solve a problem, and they will all have very clear indications of which ones the group feel solve the problem the best. So we accomplish a number of different things here. We have, again, solved lots of problems, we've generated lots of solutions, and we have also then kind of gotten a sense of consensus around which ones the group thinks solves the problem the best. So after having said all that, we're going to have an opportunity to try a little bit of a design studio process in here. Is everybody feeling up to that? Are we feeling brave? All right, good answer. So now we're going to work through a potential design problem here. How might we incentivize citizens to participate in jury duty? So the idea here is that we've noticed a lot of emergent thought around civic involvement lately for various reasons. And we noticed this piece from Newsworks that was really captivating, indicating that nearly half of folks in Philadelphia ignore jury duty summons. And I want to play this little bit for you here, because I think it's really interesting.
45% of those who receive a summons in Philadelphia for jury duty disregard it completely, which means only 55% actually fill out the questionnaire, says Jury Commissioner Daniel Radine.
Included in that are a great number of undeliverables, mail which we got back. So if you take it off the undeliverables, we're about 35 to 40% of non-responders.
Greg Hurley of the National Center for State Courts says that's not unusual for big cities.
It does sound like an ugly number. I talk to jury managers on a daily basis. There are many that are far worse than Philadelphia, but it's not a good number. That is certainly true.
A few years ago, Philadelphia started fining those skipping jury duty, but found many couldn't afford the fine or to take a day off work. Hurley says the best tactic is to put people on a jury because those who serve on a case mostly tell others it's a worthwhile experience. I'm Tom McDonald, WHYY News.
So what we just heard is that there is an emergent problem in Philadelphia and across the nation, I'm sure, but specifically in Philadelphia. People are just not participating in jury duty. So what are some of the ways that we can encourage citizens to participate in jury duty? And that's the problem we're going to attack with this little design studio session here. So does everybody have a couple of sheets of 4-up gridded paper here? So what I'm going to ask you to do now is I'm going to give everybody 5 minutes and to use those sheets of paper in front of you to sketch out a potential solution to how might we encourage citizens in Philadelphia to participate in jury duty. There are no wrong answers. This is a safe space. So any and all ideas are on the table here. So you can use these sheets to sketch out in sort of like a comic book storyboard type of frame. You can solve the problem via, if you think it's a software-based solution, solve it that way. Design it, sketch it out. But remember, your sketches are merely placeholders for your ideas because some of you are going to be asked to pitch your ideas to the room. So keep that in the back of your mind as well. Does anyone have any clarifying questions? Does anyone not understand what we're about to do? Yes. You, as many ideas as you are able to produce in 5 minutes. That's the goal. We're looking for quality, of course, but really quantity, because quantity then encourages that type of divergent thinking that we're looking for. You need a Sharpie? Does anyone not have anything to write with? You can use whatever you have on your person for the purposes of this exercise. All right. Your 5 minutes to sketch out your solution to the question, how might we encourage citizens to participate in jury duty? Yes?
Are we looking to, do we have any constraints, or are we looking to solve a very broad problem for lots of people, or are we looking to solve a problem for, specific people?
I would say for the purposes of this exercise, as broad thinking as possible. Are there any other clarifying questions about what we're being asked to do? All right, well then your 5 minutes starts now. Remember, you can use your sheets to present the idea as a storyboard, use each square to present one different idea, or you don't have to be constrained by the squares at all. They're just there to help. 10 seconds left, so finish up whatever frame you're sketching through right now. All right, there's your 5 minutes. How'd that feel? Fun? That's a good answer, I like that. Did anyone find that more challenging than it was? So we see there's a couple, that exercise, a number of things. Divergent thinking to be able to create lots of ideas quickly and not analyze them too much and separate that stage of analysis of the idea from creation of the idea. And the idea of the time box. It's funny how short yet long 5 minutes. Like it gives you ample opportunity to be able to crank out lots and lots and lots of ideas in that amount of time. You can run another version of this process. So take another 5 minutes, and after you've seen everybody's ideas up on the stage, take them, recombine them, remix them, and make them better. But that's 10 minutes that you spent. You end up with something that's much better. You just took those 10 minutes. This problem very broad-based so that everyone could identify with it for the purposes of this exercise. But when you go to apply that to yourself, I would challenge you to still maintain that time box. Maybe do multiple iterations of it, but still see what that constraint yields. Yes?
Maybe you're going to get to this, but think one of the key things is this is a problem that we can identify with as all being potential users and subject to the issue that we're talking about. But it's a software problem. The challenge is I'm not the right person to ask for the ideas. There are many schools in user experience, human factors research.
Sure.
Sitting together in a room with the developers or the product owners is not the way to get the right ideas for the goals of the users at all. So how do you deal with the fact that I need to have the right people be the ones who offer the ideas, rather than me acting as if I'm channeling somebody who I might not be able to represent?
That will definitely depend upon your business model and what you're able to do. I love to run a design studio where I'm able to invite actual users of the potential product that I'm designing. I don't always get that opportunity being a consultant, so you will then have someone who is, for instance, maybe the head of product or a researcher or something like that. So they will be able to act as a proxy for that, for the user, but it's always best to be able to have the actual user with you in the room. Or there's definitely qualifying questions you'll need to ask, and you'll know whether you need to identify the right users or not. It can't be. So I wouldn't run a session like this with 50 users. Generally, the best size, the most success I've had with this process has been in a room with about 10 to 12 people. That's about the upper limit.
Can I just build on that?
Please.
There's also the opportunity to incorporate what's called extreme users. So you get as much valuable information from people who will show up at every single jury duty and people who always bail, who always find an excuse. So that bell curve of users is really helpful.
Yep, absolutely. And that's an art in and of itself, is picking the right type of user to bring into a process like this. Yes?
A lot of my challenge is trying to unlearn habits that work for me well, right?
Exactly.
So I still spent time, to me it was important to define the problem. Right? So I had to define the problem, give myself a few constraints. I had to do a parenting approach rather than positive reinforcement. Make sure that my solutions were kind of under that umbrella. But that counteracts, right, this approach a little bit. So I need repetition, right?
Sure.
Iteration of this.
Sure.
To help them learn.
So yes, so for the purposes of today's activity, we'll go through one set of sketching, but yeah, you can definitely run normal or numbers of these back to back, and then you'll start to gain repetition. You'll start to churn through earlier ideas and start to get to the good stuff once you've seen what the rest of the room has to offer. Which brings me to the part of the program where I ask for some very, very brave volunteers who would like to share some of the ideas that they came up with. I need about 5 folks who are willing to pitch their group. You, and you. Okay, great. Who would like to start? Okay. So I'm going to try something and see if this works here. I want to see if we can present these via the screen. New. Will that work? It will. So if you want to come up here and let me hold your sketch while you.
Yeah. I was afraid you.
All right. So if you want to go over there and gesture. Go for it. Do you want to?
I'll be honest, I wasn't going to do it. And then you said you might call on people, so and I thought, well, I can't really think of anything. And then I thought it was actually easier once I started going. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
So the first one I have is, and it kind of plays off of what you just said, Len, that people tend to volunteer to do jury duty when they hear a testimonial. So I thought, why don't we have people be able to share their jury duty experience on social media? Like, hey, I just left the jury, and I'm going to tweet about it, or share on Facebook, Instagram, or whatever. And then kind of going off of that, I was like, oh, this is intuitive. I'm sure you've all signed up for a ticket leave event that says, tell your friends you're going to do jury duty. So my next idea was to, I just got invited to jury duty. I'm going to tell my friends about it. And then in the lower left here, I'm going to invite friends to jury duty. So 35% of people are showing up for jury duty, so if everybody invited someone, then you have twice as many. And then my last idea is kind of like, think of the Sixers and how they made 10 games to get extra lottery tickets. I participated in jury duty, so I get a lottery ticket to some lottery where I can win millions of dollars. Although people may end up trying to intentionally end up.
That's great, thank you. Out of here, pardon me. So, given the size of the room and the size of the group here, what we would do is we would tape these up on a wall somewhere, and someone gesture at them while they presented, but obviously we're constrained by the room and constrained by the size, so I'll try and hold them as still as possible for the next one. Would you like to go?
Along those same lines, another idea I had in the upper right is that when a juror is leaving the courthouse after they serve, interview them and then encourage them to tweet and encourage them to, and maybe record the interview on film and then try to put that together into something where you're getting people's real experiences and putting them out there on social media for people to see. This is just a way, like, so if one of your friends says, hey, if you step out of the courthouse and then sit down with somebody and they ask you questions about how you feel and how what it was like, and then they encourage you somehow to put that out there for your friends to see on Facebook, on Twitter, or whatever. I think that's going to be much more effective because this is someone who's in your circle, and this is a very good way of getting the information out there to them. So then you can connect with that, and it will encourage you to participate as well.
So even just the idea of getting ideas out here and sharing them for public consumption could then generate a pivot in someone's mind. For instance, a number of us suggested the idea of paying more as an incentive. So there are probably challenges for the city to be able to do that. I'm sure they're financially constrained. Travis talked a little bit about different types of incentivization. So we can then identify that and say, well, if we can't do money, what can we do? And Travis walked down that road a little bit. So we can see how even ideas that don't work for the purposes of a design studio. Does anybody have any questions about the process we just went through? Any clarifying questions? Anyone curious about why we did something a certain way or what would happen next in a process? Yes?
What do you see the real value in the sketches as? Why sketch?
I think sketches, because they allow us to generate lots of ideas quickly. I think they are at the appropriate level of fidelity so that we are focusing on the idea rather than the execution. And that's what I am a UX designer and I do a lot of visual design as well. And I've discovered that if I move to visual design too rapidly, before the group has come to a consensus on the concept or the overarching theme of a piece, then we start to critique the visual design rather than the underlying idea. So the idea is to present gradually more layers of fidelity once we agree on the previous layer that we just presented. Does that? Please.
I think that's absolutely right. I think also the value in visualizing ideas is that it begets questions. So you're not having to arrive at the answer because they're so sketchy and they're so low fidelity. So I think that's a really important part of this process to understand what the next level of questions might be.
Yes, Travis.
I think it comes from the same place that the philosophy of agile software engineering approaches is that you get a limited amount of information down in the form of a user story. A sketch is the sort of analog for that in the design space. And it serves as a point of discussion and dialogue because most of the understanding that gets shared between the team members is by talking. And it's it's just a visual aid for that, as much as user story, while it has words in it, it's almost a visual aid for the same kind of discussion for figuring out how to do design.
Sure.
Software engineering.
That's a great analogy. They are both abstractions for and representations of the types of conversations we need to be having to move a process forward. It's a really great analogy. I like that a lot. I see one more. Yes?
Is there any magic reason why you picked 5 minutes? You start conflict results like 10 or even an hour or a week?
The 5 minutes is meant to be a constraint so that we are, first of all, it's a short amount of time, so you can get through multiple problems, or in the software where features or epics, if you will. And it also seems to be, that's where I've noticed I've done these at 10 minutes and I've done these at 3 minutes, and people are always still working at 3 minutes. And usually their pens go down somewhere around 6-ish minutes. You start to hit the end of the immediate ideas. So that's the constraint, to just cut it off there and then move on to the next thing. But I mean, see, one of the things, a lot of the stuff we talk about in design thinking and design theory is everything's a hypothesis, right? So every idea is ripe for testing. So if you choose to run these, try a number of different times, see what works with your group of engineers or users or designers. You may find that 7 minutes is more appropriate. I would probably steer clear of anything more than 10 minutes, because that starts to defeat the spirit of the time box. But you know, experiment with it, have fun. Are there any? Yes.
Hold on 1 second, sir.
I could probably project.
We need it for.
Oh, sorry. Just a quick question about how much time would you spend in a normal design session, like discussing like the operational activities? Things like, would you ask the question of what does each participant in jury duty do?
Sure.
And how could each one of those, if you broke those down, like a typical like functional decomposition approach? Is that part of the process?
The table setting and the illumination. The unsatisfying answer is that it depends. It depends on how complex the problem we're attempting to solve is and how much domain knowledge the group shares. But I will say on average, my experience is we will often run these sessions that they'll be about 8 hours, a regular work day long. We'll spend up to a quarter of the time doing that illumination work, doing the feature definition, the user mapping, and hopefully everyone's come to the group with some background understanding, but that first 2 hours will generally be around talking around like table setting, stuff like that. Yes?
1 second, sir.
How does this interact with ideas like dialogue mapping and IBIS, information-based, issue-based information systems? Have you used any of those?
I have not used any of those in my work.
Are you familiar with them? How do they compare from what you just experienced?
Well, certainly you're not necessarily, the sketches would be feed into this, but what you're doing is making public the issues. In dialogue mapping, you'd have a screen where various issues appeared, and so the pros and cons of each issue would then be listed against those. And you could say, we've dealt with this. This already is proved unworkable. But also, as an issue goes up there, it no longer belongs to Travis. It's just an issue on the board. So it gets the personal element out. But it does say, are there gaps? Are there places we're missing criteria we have to meet? I've worked with that over the past, on and off for the past 10 or 15 years, looking into it for various issues, similar to design, dealing with what are called wicked problems.
I'm not familiar with that particular framework, but you did attach to something that's really key. It's that idea of removing ownership from the solution. So you'll notice that there was a little spot there to write your name on these sheets, but that's really more about if we have to come back and ask you a clarifying question about the sketch. The goal is to not have someone take ownership of the idea. The goal is to put it on the board and then once you build up this corpus of a wall full of ideas, they start to merge and come together, and you're less worried about who the idea came from and more worried about how can we build this into something great. Any other questions? That's great. Well, I want to thank you all for taking the time with us this afternoon. Thanks to Natalie for sharing this stage with us.
Thank you, Len.
And thank you for the support staff here with the microphone problems that we were having. And that's great. I can be reached at info@arcweb.com. That'll come to me as well. And Natalie shared her contact information.
Natalie at Figure Thinking.
Great, yeah. And we'll be able to answer any clarifying questions or that may come up. So please feel free to reach out if you would like to know any more. And thank you all. Appreciate it.